Ever wished you could just download someone's life experiences? Like just hit a button and suddenly you'd get a feel for what it's like to walk in their shoes.
Haha. Wouldn't that be something? A direct download of experiences straight to the brain.
Right. Well, today's kind of like that. We're taking a deep dive into a story that gives us a glimpse into life in rural Argentina.
Ah, from the source material we got, this is going to be fascinating. I'm ready to dive in.
Exactly. It's excerpts from a novel called El Niño del Cerro, which means the boy from the hill. And don't worry, we'll take care of any translation stuff.
Perfect, because my Spanish is a little rusty. But from what I've heard, it's more than just a story, right?
Totally. It's like a window into a different culture, a different pace of life. We get to see how this family lives, what their everyday is like.
So, like, where do we even start with something like this?
Well, we meet our main man, Julio, as a young boy. He's growing up in this small mining town in the Andes Mountains.
Okay, so already we've got a vivid setting. The Andes, that's incredible.
Right. And, as I was reading about Julio, I was struck by how relatable he is, even with this totally different backdrop.
Yeah, how so?
He loves to fish, gets into his share of mischief.
Typical kid stuff.
Exactly. And he's totally obsessed with his comic books. Universal kid stuff.
Oh, absolutely. That just takes me back. I remember spending hours poring over comic books when I was a kid.
Right. And the novel really captures those universal experiences of childhood so well. Like there's this one scene where Julio tries to impress his crush by reciting poetry.
Ooh, brave move. How'd that go?
It totally backfires. I think we've all had those awkward adolescent moments.
Oh, tell me about it. Cringeworthy doesn't even begin to describe some of mine. But I guess that's what makes it so relatable, right? We've all been there.
Totally. It's those little details that make the characters come alive, make them feel real.
It's like you're right there with them experiencing those moments firsthand.
And speaking of details, this book doesn't shy away from depicting the realities of life in this rural community.
What do you mean?
Well, money is tight, resources are limited, but there's this amazing sense of resourcefulness that shines through.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Okay, so there's this part where Julio fixes a flat tire using only 10 cents and some ingenuity.
Whoa, 10 cents. That's some serious resourcefulness right there.
Right. It really makes you think about the different ways people adapt when they don't have easy access to all the things we might take for granted.
Absolutely. It speaks to a different way of life, a different set of priorities.
And it really highlights how important community is in this world. When times get tough, people rely on each other.
Yeah.
They share what they have, they support each other.
It's like that old saying, it takes a village, right?
Exactly. You really get that village vibe in these excerpts.
So we've got Julio, we've got this close-knit community. What about his family?
Oh, yeah. Can't forget about them. Julio's parents, Ernesto and Irma, are a whole other layer to this story.
What are they like?
Well, they're this fascinating study in contrasts. They're a close family, for sure, but with their own little quirks and secrets.
Ooh, secrets. Now you've got me hooked.
It unfolds gradually as the story goes on, but it definitely adds to the intrigue.
Yeah.
But yeah, they play a huge role in shaping Julio's world, that's for sure.
Well, that makes sense. Parents usually do, right? So tell me more about them. What's Ernesto like?
So Ernesto, the dad, at first, he comes across as a man of few words, kind of the strong, silent type.
Okay, I can see that. The stoic father figure.
But as we get deeper into the story, we discover a whole other side to him through this, wait for it, secret diary.
Ooh, a secret diary. Now that's interesting. What's in it? Spill the tea.
Oh, it's like this gold mine of teenage angst and dreams. Ernesto writes about his worries, his hopes, even a crush he had on a girl.
That's kind of sweet. It's easy to forget that our parents were once teenagers too, you know? Going through all the same awkward phases and everything.
I know, right? It's such a good reminder that they weren't born as parents. They had their own whole lives before us, their own dreams and heartbreaks and all that.
Okay, so Ernesto's got the secret diary going on. What about Irma? What's she like?
Okay, so get this. Irma is a midwife, but she's terrified of childbirth herself.
Whoa, really? That's pretty ironic. A midwife who's scared of childbirth. That's a good one.
Right. It's those little contradictions that make the characters so interesting, so relatable.
It definitely adds a layer of depth and complexity to them. Like,
Yeah.
nobody's just one thing, right?
Right.
We all have our quirks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of quirks, there's this little detail about the family's love for asado, which is like Argentinian barbecue.
Oh, I love a good asado.
Well, they like their meat well done, crispy fat and all. Just a little detail that adds to the whole cultural picture.
I love that. It's those little cultural details that really bring a story to life. Like, you can practically smell the asado cooking on the grill.
Right. It just makes you feel like you're right there with them. It makes you think, what are our own key cultural quirks that might seem unusual to someone from a different background?
It's all about perspective, isn't it? What we consider normal might seem completely foreign to someone else, and vice versa.
Now, this family eventually ends up moving from their small town in the Andes to a completely different world, the bustling city of Buenos Aires.
Wow, that's a big change from the mountains to the city. I can't even
And
imagine.
talk about a culture shock.
Yeah.
And we're along for the ride as they navigate this transition. It's like going from one extreme to the other, right from this tranquil mountain setting to the hustle and bustle of city life.
And, it's not just the physical environment that changes for them. We see Julio facing new challenges, trying to fit in at this new school, dealing with all those awkward teenage anxieties, but now in this whole different context.
And it makes you wonder, right? Like, how did his upbringing in that close-knit rural community prepare him for all of this? How did it shape his perspective?
It's like he's thrown into the deep end, and we get to see how he sinks or swims.
Exactly. And through it all, those family bonds, those are put to the test too,
Mm-hmm.
especially when Irma gets sick.
Yeah.
That part of the novel is, well, it's heartbreaking.
Oh, man. Yeah, it really makes you feel for them. But it's also a testament to how this novel doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows.
Totally. And I think that's what makes it so powerful. It embraces both the joys and the sorrows of life with this incredible authenticity. You see Julio, who started out as this carefree kid, really stepping up, showing a maturity beyond his years as he tries to support his family through this difficult time.
It's like those moments of adversity really have a way of revealing our true character, both in ourselves and in those around us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And, it also brings us back to Ernesto and his secret diary. It's amazing how his private thoughts, written years earlier, give us this whole new perspective on who he is as a father now.
It's like we get to see a different side of him, a side that he might not even show to Julio directly.
Right. And I think that's what makes the diary so fascinating. It reveals this parallel between Ernesto's adolescence and Julio's own experiences.
Yeah.
Like father, like son.
It's funny how life works out that way, right? Like some things are just universal no matter what generation you're from or where you grew up. That struggle of growing up, figuring out who you are, it's something we all go through.
And here's Julio trying to find his place in this new environment, dealing with first love, all those confusing emotions, and suddenly he discovers that his dad went through those same exact
What makes
things.
you think, what will our kids learn from our experiences? Even stuff we think is totally insignificant could end up being meaningful to them later on.
Right? It's like this legacy of shared human experience passed down through generations. And even though El Niño del Cerro focuses on this one family in Argentina, their story, it resonates on a universal level because we've all had those moments of uncertainty, of feeling lost of life, throwing us a curveball.
It's how we respond to those curveballs that really matters.
Right.
How we pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and keep moving forward. That's what shapes us.
And sometimes those challenges, they reveal a strength we never even knew we had.
Yeah.
Like when Julio and Irma get sick, we see this new side of him, this resilience, this capacity for compassion that we hadn't seen before.
It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
But it's also about more than just being strong. It's about allowing ourselves to feel the full range of human emotions,
Yeah.
the joy and the sorrow and everything in between.
And I think that's something that El Niño del Cerro does so well. It doesn't shy away from those difficult emotions. It embraces them. It reminds us that it's okay to not be okay all the time, that it's through those experiences, those ups and downs, that we truly grow and evolve as people.
It's about finding those silver linings even on the cloudiest of days, right? And it makes me think back to that idea of resourcefulness. We see it throughout the whole story, the way Julio fixes that flat tire with just 10 cents, the way this family pulls together when times get tough, the way Julio himself steps up to face these new challenges.
It's about adapting, making the most of what you have, and finding creative solutions, even when it seems like there aren't any. It's that ability to find a way forward, even when things are tough.
Yes.
And that's something I think we can all relate to, no matter what our circumstances are.
Absolutely. It's about resilience, ingenuity, and that deep well of human strength we often don't even know we have until we're tested.
And it's often found in the most unexpected places, right? Like a 10-cent tire fix, or a shared meal, or a father's diary passed down to a son.
It's those little details, those seemingly insignificant moments that often hold the most meaning. That's what makes a story like El Niño del Cerro so powerful. Even though it's set in a specific time and place, It speaks to these universal truths about what it means to be human.
Exactly. And it reminds us that even in the midst of hardship, even when things feel uncertain, there's always this flicker of hope, this thread of resilience that runs through it all.
It's like that saying, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Spot on.
Sometimes the detours, the unexpected challenges, those are the things that end up shaping us the most.
And through those challenges, we discover our own strength
Yeah.
and the strength we find in the connections we make with others.
It's that sense of community, that shared human experience that can make all the difference.
It really makes you think about your own story, right? What would it look like if someone were to write it down? Capture all those little details, those moments that make up a life.
And what would someone else learn from those details? It's an interesting thought experiment, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you realize that our experiences, even the ones we might consider mundane or insignificant, they have the power to resonate with others, to connect us in ways we might never have imagined.
Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to figure things out, navigate this crazy thing called life. And sometimes all it takes is a good story, a glimpse into someone else's journey to remind us that we're not alone in that.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into El Niño del Cerro. But the conversation doesn't have to end here, you know? What are your takeaways? What resonated with you?
I'd love to hear from our listeners too. What are your stories of resilience and resourcefulness? Let's keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of rural Argentina. And until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep those stories alive.